Hank the Cowdog, The Case of the Vampire Cat by John R. Erickson. Chapter 4, The Kitty is Lured into My Trap. But of course, we mustn't forget that there were other circumstances involved. Did I mention that I had pulled a muscle in my right hind leg? Oh yes, bad pull. I hadn't warmed up, you see, and the cat probably spent all morning warming up, just preparing for the sprint to the cake house. So one interpretation of the facts is that she, well, cheated. Or if she hadn't actually cheated, she had certainly taken unfair advantage of the situation. Hey, I had a steady job and many things to do besides warm up for some silly race to the cake house. In the larger scheme of things, that race meant nothing. Almost nothing, anyway. I mean, who cared, really? Life is filled with challenges, and racing a rinky-dink cat ranks very far down the list. And did I mention about the cockleburs? Not only was I slowed by a tragic pull of the greater boogaloo muscle in my right posterior thigh, which would have put most dogs out of the race right there. Once the race began, I found myself running over gobs and gobs of cockleburs. Dangerous cockleburs. Have you ever tried to run a hard race on cockleburs? It's virtually impossible. You talk about pain. No ordinary dog could have stayed in that race. I not only stayed in the race, I finished a respectable second. Might have very well won the race if it had gone on for maybe just 20 more feet. And if that cat hadn't cheated and used underhanded tricks to... But the important thing is that the race meant nothing to me. And finishing second to a stupid cat sure didn't damage my self-esteemer. And just to prove how insignificant the whole thing was to me, I went over to the cat and gave her my congratulations for a race well run. Kitty, I said between gulps of air, as a small token of my admiration for your athletic ability, I'm going to make sausage patties out of you. Now, a lot of cats will run when you offer such a small token. This one whirled around, humped up, hissed, stared at me with those strange yellowish eyes and said, "Listen, clown, you lay one paw on me, and I'll take out your eyeballs and feed 'em to the crows." Huh? And don't think I can't do it. I took several paces back and said, "Settle down, sister. I think perhaps you... I've been marooned on this place for over 2 long years. I've survived coons, coyotes, bobcats, skunks, badgers, eagles, hawks, and rattlesnakes." Well, sure, and I admire you that in some limited sense. You may think you're tough, pot licker, but you don't even know the meaning of the word until you lay a paw on me. I cleared my throat. I sense that we're barking up the wrong road here. Perhaps you misappropriated my meaning. All I meant to say was that, well, you ran a pretty good race. And for a cat... She studied me a little bit with those unblinking cattish eyes. "What about the sausage business?" The sausage business. Oh, that. I meant that almost nothing. I just had a little attempt at humor. She heaved a sigh of relief, and the hump in her back went down.
It's been so long since I've had any sausage.
Right? Exactly. And my whole point was, I was just saying, wouldn't it be nice to have a bite of sausage? And I leaned forward and whispered, cheese. That word had a dramatic effect on her. And I wondered what was going on with Miss Mary D. Cat. All at once, the pink little mouth curled up into a smile. She closed her eyes and began to purr, purr, and started rubbing on my leg.
Cheese! Oh, what I'd give for a piece of cheese! I dream of cheese, you know. A crust of bread, bologna cheese. Spare a morsel, if you please. Maroon am I, oh hateful place. At last I found a friendly face.
Very interesting. It appeared that I had stumbled across a case of schizophrenic personality. And in case you're not familiar with the heavy-duty technical terms, let me explain. Your typical schizophrenic personality skips from one mood to another. At 1 minute they're all chirpy and happy, and the next they'll be yelling and hissing, and in extreme cases they'll even make boastful threats like, I'll tear your eyes out and feed them to the crows. And another trait or characteristic of schizophrenic personality is that the skipping mechanism can be activated by a certain code word. And will you notice that it took me only a matter of seconds to sniff out and discover Mary D. Cat's code word? Cheese. Pretty clever, huh? And now I can reveal for the very first time that this so-called race to the cake house was just a ploy I had used to gather information about this weird little cat. That's correct. I'd planned it from the very start, and losing the race was just my overall strategy. Are you shocked? Surprised? Don't ever underestimate the cunning of a head of ranch security. And don't forget that we spend most of our time doing underground work. And don't forget that staying at least one step ahead of the kiddies is all part of my job. Okay, where were we? Oh, yes. I had just outsmarted and outflanked Mary D. Cat and had gathered crucial information I needed. And now she was purring and rubbing on my legs and driving me nuts. And once again, I found myself thinking, get away from me! But rather than coming right out and saying that, which would have been tacky and unfriendly and, well, might have caused her to skip back over to the tear your eyeballs out scenario, I elected to, well, flee. Surrender my spot. Run around to the back of the cake house, and guess who I find hiding there? Mr. Shivers. He greeted me with his usual, "Oh, hi, Hank. What are you doing back here?" "Oh, watching the snow fall and shivering." "I see. Is there some reason why you can't shiver and watch the snowflakes around front with the rest of us?" "Well, I guess I wanted to get away from that cat. I just don't know what to say to her when she starts rubbing on me." "She's just trying to be friendly, Drover." "Yeah, but she gives me the creeps. I never met a cat like her." "Yes, well, you must understand, Drover. She's been marooned out here, living by herself for years. She doesn't know how to respond to the sudden appearance of dogs who are, well, highly intelligent, dashing, daring, donder, and blitzen and handsome." "Yeah, that's me, all right." I glared at the mutt. Actually, I had myself in mind. But since you brought up the subject of the cat, I placed my paw on his shoulder and led him a few steps away. There, I glanced around to be sure that we weren't being watched, and I conducted the rest of the conversation in a whisper. Since you brought up the subject of the cat, I wonder if I might if you might do a little job for me.
What little job?
Well, actually, Drover, it's not so little. In fact, it's a mission of great importance.
Gosh, and you'd let me do that?
That's correct. And I've had my eye on you for a long time now, Drover, with this particular mission in mind. And I'm proud to tell you that I think you're ready for it. He puffed himself up and beamed with pride.
Gosh, I'm so happy and proud I don't know what to say.
I understand, son, and saying nothing might be just fine.
But it's such an important job. How come you can trust me with it?
Because, now I started pacing, as I often do when I'm reaching to the gaseous clouds and vapor and trying to find just the right words to express my deep thought. Because, Drover, it's time. It's time for you to take on more responsibility, and it's time for me to let you take on more responsibility. Suddenly I stopped pacing, whirled around, and by George fell right over an embankment. I hadn't even noticed it was there. I climbed back out and gave him a steely gaze. Are you ready to handle more responsibility?
Oh, yeah, sure, you bet. Unless, what's the job?
I paced back over to him, placed my paw on his shoulder. It was a touching moment. Drover, we're building up a profile of this cat, and we need some additional information.
And
we've selected you to, conduct a little survey and ask the kitty a little question. Now, here's the question. Kitty cat, what would you say if I told you I'm going to make sausage patties out of you? He twisted his head, stared at me.
Sausage patties!
That's correct. It's just routine market research, Drover. We want to know what she thinks of sausage patties.
Well, that sounds simple enough. Just ask her the question, huh?
Yes, and then come right back and tell me the answer. I'll take it from there.
Gosh, I can handle this. Here I go.
Good luck, son. Well, Drover went skipping around the front of the cake house and moved to a chinaberry tree. I moved to a chinaberry tree to set up an observation post. There I waited. Very interesting. Her answer to the question about sausage patties was a handful of claws to Drover's nose. Whack! And instead of reporting back to me, the little runts went running and screaming all the way back to the house. Well, we had sustained a small blot on our record, but we had gained important information. Mary D. Cat wasn't one to waste words, and she had a zero sense of humor. I mean, zilch. Well, that's all of Chapter 4, and be sure to tune in a little later for Chapter 5. We teach the cat a valuable lesson about life. Thank you. Good night.